One. Right. Welcome to another episode of the Engineering Leaders podcast series, where we are actually bringing together engineering leaders from various fields to understand the path of how a young, aspiring engineer can succeed and build an exciting career ahead of them. So today, our guest, we have Anirudh, who is currently the Chief Automation Officer for Galamad Aerospace, which is a satellite manufacturing startup in Singapore, here on this show today. So Anirudh started his engineering journey by doing a Bachelor's of Mechanical Engineering at IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, which I believe it's one of India's top university institutions for everything tech and engineering. And I heard that he had to be top 0.5% of his cohort to be even enrolled. So, having developed a strong passion in manufacturing technology, Anirudh continued his studies here in Singapore, doing his master's and specializing in manufacturing and automation, where he worked on big projects to develop and commercialize food 3D printing, where he took one step further to launch his own startup, Anrich 3D. So, as someone who has always been one of the top engineers amongst his peers and cohort, Anirudh really continued to stay extremely grounded and humble about the work that he has put in, focusing a lot of his efforts to solve complex engineering problems that have huge application and impact on the way we live today. So without further ado, let's welcome Anirudh here on this show. Welcome Anirudh. Great to have you here. And I found it really interesting that you landed your first research job here in SUTD. That was where I was from.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, anyways, let's break the ice. So Anirudh, could you share with everyone about yourself, what you're currently doing and perhaps a little bit more about the work that you are doing over at Galamad Aerospace?
Galamad is actually short for Galaxy Nomad because
Oh,
what
right.
we want to be eventually. So about me, as you mentioned, I did my bachelor's in IIT Roorkee uh, in mechanical engineering, and then in my first year of the first semester, I was introduced to manufacturing technology, and it just immediately clicked as the thing that I really
Yeah.
wanted to do. So I ended up doing a master's specializing in manufacturing and automation in NUS,
Mm,
and there I was introduced to the concept of realistically applying technopreneurship.
mm,
That clicked again as the ideal combination of application and impact
mm,
versus doing something highly technical. So that's the route that I have chosen for myself going forward,
mm,
trying to do Enriched and now working at Galamad, and that's basically the story. I did during my masters. I did a thesis project
okay.
in lieu of two subjects because it was masters by coursework and not by thesis.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that differentiated me. It gave me some hands-on experience above and beyond what most of the cohort had.
Yeah.
So that is what fits so well with the requirements of the research job at SUPD, and that's how I landed that job. And gaining some work experience building actual robots. It was a soft robotics research job.
Mm,
So building some actual prototypes gave me the necessary experience to try out food 3D printing as a commercial venture. I approached NTU to do the research first to develop that as a product, and then commercialize it as a spin-off. And that was another thing that I did as an initiative. Instead of like applying for a job or something like that, I just straight up went with a proposal that this is what I want to do. And the professors liked that initiative,
mm,
and that they created a position for me. And it was a wild ride doing that for several years, developing many different prototypes for different kinds of food 3D printers with different
mm,
capabilities, and more importantly, doing a lot of networking and exhibitions, so many pitches, meeting so many people, traveling all around the world.
mm,
Yeah, it was really an amazing experience, and as it was coming to an end, as I was realizing that there's not enough market for it, that maybe there's some issues with the technology or the timing of it.
Mm.
I was approached. The years of networking actually helped or like came back to me as Christopher from Galamad, who's the founder, reached out to me out of the blue 2 years after I first met him briefly in one networking event and
Okay.
just offered me this opportunity of a lifetime to uh, make something that's literally out of this world.
Yes, exactly. But I saw that you really, through our earlier conversations, you spoke very passionately about, the work that you're doing at Galamad Aerospace. So could you share a little bit more about, what really intrigued you and perhaps maybe drawn you into that opportunity and got you excited?
Yeah, as I said, there's nothing more exciting than being able to make something that is literally out of this world,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah,
and uh,
right.
some having your mark on something that will go to space or something like that. That in itself is super exciting.
Mm,
Uh, and there's another aspect to that same thing, that it is a highly technical uh, field, or a highly demanding line of work, and that is exciting in itself in another way. But even beyond that, the thing that makes this opportunity so much better than anything I could have imagined is that the potential that it has for impact. By default, anything that goes to space, like in terms of satellites,
yep.
at least, it orbits. So it literally goes all around the world. So our default is having something global.
Mm,
That's not something that we have to strive towards later on. That's the starting point, and that means that anything that we are able to do successfully at scale will have a massive impact on how the entire world works in terms of whatever the technology ends up being. For instance, if we talk about the communications, so high-speed communications from space, from low Earth orbit, can like bring basically free communications available for a very large number of people who still might not have good access. And that in itself can be transformative, drastically changing the total number of people who have access to the global economy. Then the thing that's more exciting than that is the next step, which is the energy beaming. So if we can do, if that works, then with energy beaming, you could have basically limitless energy available on Earth for everything. So not only can we pretty much eliminate all carbon footprint, but also do so no new emissions. And on top of that, we can use all that extra energy for a lot of carbon sequestration to reverse the effects of climate change. And we use that for, getting clean water everywhere with distillation and all those energy intensive technologies like that. So, and there are other applications like that. So, if there's any one application with space technology that works well, it will just change the world, making it almost
mm,
unrecognizable to what it was before. And having that kind of impact to be able to have at least have the potential or the option
mm.
to change the world, not just once, but maybe even twice in a single lifetime. That's not an opportunity anyone can pass up.
Oh, wow. I mean, not many engineers that I know of is moving into the like satellite manufacturing, much I mean the space industry. I think it's always because or at least in Singapore, people are more traditional. They go the traditional tech routes, and of course the more industrial kind of manufacturing as opposed to, let's say, a more space kind of industry. So, I was just curious as well because I saw the good work that Galamad Aerospace are doing. So, perhaps maybe you could share with me, for Galamad Aerospace, what are kind of the work that you guys are doing very differently from how other perhaps maybe satellite manufacturing industries are doing, and how are you planning to disrupt the industry?
So there are not a lot of satellite manufacturing firms that are specifically doing this kind of stuff, like making just the satellites without a specific purpose in mind. Like usually, it's an established aerospace company that is doing its own satellites for an existing purpose, or it's like a telecommunications company that happens to need satellites, so it's making those for a specific purpose. And they all keep these capabilities mostly in house. And more often than not, anything to do with space is probably done by a government rather than a company or a private entity.
Mm,
So that also um, acts as a huge barrier and a huge gatekeeper to a lot of things. And it also means that because governments are not limited by budgets and they don't have the same kind of priorities that companies do,
mm,
the barrier to entry, the financial barrier to entry for this kind of production is also a lot higher because the suppliers for space grade stuff are just asking higher prices because they can and because all of their customers are willing to pay those. So as we see that the space industry has existed for several decades now, and there are consumer technologies that have gotten good enough to be used in a lot of the things, like especially for electronics. So that's what that is kind of what SpaceX was doing uh,
mm,
to bring down the price of space access to space and uh, we are going to do something similar, but for the satellites and instead of the rockets. So what we want to do is standardize and mass produce modular satellites
mm,
where you can put on a payload and that payload can be swappable and the satellite can come back and be refurbished with a new payload. So the same basic structure of the satellite can be used for a lot of different applications, be it communications, surveying, spectroscopy,
mm,
or any kind of imaging or other applications, which means that we get a lot of scale and we can act as a platform for anything space. All kinds of different applications can be catered to by the one thing by the one platform that we can offer by just producing a large number of satellites of the same basic design, and that means that we can make it easier and cheaper to access space, which means a lot more people are going to be able to get into this industry and really help it grow much faster, and be like less esoteric or less terrifying as something to approach for young engineers.
awesome. And in our earlier exchanges, you also mentioned that you were able to be admitted to IIT, which I believe is really a prestigious university in India. Could you share with the audiences how those experience at IIT actually went for you, and what were some of the biggest lessons you learned during your time there?
So the IIT is a very competitive university to get into. There are several IITs throughout India, but compared to the population, it's basically not. uh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
uh, to get into IIT, you take this exam called Joint Entrance Exam, so IIT JEE, and usually there are like when I took the exam, there were uh, around 400,000 people who applied or like who took the exam, but there are only 8 to 10,000 seats, so like 2.5% is all the people. Um, that includes all the different IITs and all the different branches within those. So that means that if you don't have like a like within the top 1 or 0.5%, uh, you probably won't be able to get the thing of your choice in a reputable institution. So so that's like it's the numbers that skew it a little bit. but that still means that it is incredibly hard to get in. So there's this entire industry of coaching institutions in India to prepare for IIT for the 2 years prior to that. So in grade 11 and 12, before we go in for our bachelor's, there are people just studying continuously all the time. There's even an entire city dedicated just to that, called Kota, and uh, students just go there and live like monks, just studying all the time. So,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I also did some coaching, and I I studied everything that was in the syllabus 5 times, and all that hard work and my innate interest in that thing, in all of science,
wow.
my uh, my desire to do something with technology, all of those things culminated in me being able to get through one of the good institutions. So I'm grateful for that, and yeah, it was hard. After getting in, I experienced being around like-minded people,
Mm.
especially those who I can totally nerd out with for the first time.
I can imagine.
And
Yeah.
it and that really taught me how important it is to surround yourself with the right people, not just in terms of have choosing the right friends wherever you happen to be, but
Yep.
also choosing where you want to be, because the environment and the people that make that place great are uh, are important to the overall uh, like structure of the institution, in the sense that if the best minds are coming there to do something great time after time, year on year, it also creates this virtuous cycle of positive reinforcement, and that also makes a difference in how much effort you will put in, and how much results you will expect out of yourself. The other thing I learned was to make sure to take the initiative to try as much new and different things as you can, because ultimately that's what really matters more, especially when you're looking for a job,
Mm.
because a lot of people will have similar grades and even similar university degrees as you, but to get a job or to be able to do something meaningful, you need to have some hands-on experience that the company is able to see and take as proof of your capability.
Awesome. And you mentioned about initiative, right? And in our earlier conversations, you also mentioned a little bit about how taking the initiatives really gives you an edge in finding jobs. Because you did mention, let's say for an engineer that perhaps maybe is looking to progress in their career, but maybe might not have the opportunity to enter a reputable university like yourself. I was just curious lah, how can they actually go about still finding that job opportunity that they really desire, and how would the idea of initiative work in this context?
Yeah, so uh, it might sound hard to believe, but apart from the SETD job, which just happened to be so perfectly suited to the same skill set I used in my thesis, I didn't really get any job I applied for. Uh,
Mm.
I have applied to hundreds of jobs in companies and universities and otherwise, and um, I really haven't really gotten through with the traditional route of giving out your resumes and doing normal interviews. The only thing that even in the SUTD job, even though I applied for it, the thing that made the difference and the thing that got me the job was the initiative I took to do a thesis project, even though it was master's by coursework. So doing that thing that was out of the ordinary and having some exquisite hands-on experience with actually making a prototype, that is what made all the difference. Even during IIT, I did all kinds of internships in every break, the summer break and the winter break that I got, and that gave me a more well-rounded experience. And made me a better engineer going forward.
Mm.
And uh, so after the SUTT job, it was all based on initiative. First, it was NTU, where I went with a proposal, complete with a presentation and this source of funding and how I'm going to do the project, explaining everything to the professors. And that is what got me the job, doing it in such a unique way that the position was created for me. So it's like the job applied to me instead of I applying to the job.
Interesting. Oh, that's crazy.
And then with this job at Galamad as well, it was because I did so much networking and just liked meeting new people doing interesting things like this. That is what made the difference. I didn't apply for this job, and like if I saw the job description of this, I would have been intimidated, being like
Mm.
thinking like this. Oh, this is too complicated. There's no way I can do this. But then the employer knows a little better about what's actually required. And Christopher has done a good job of compiling a team which perfectly complements all the different kinds of skill sets that are required. So it's not as hard as it was appear at as it would appear from the outside. So I think that this is really important to have that initiative and do the networking, do unique things, and approach people, employers, and companies in a different way, in your unique way, to do proposals like this or to uh, showcase how you can help or how you can solve a problem rather than going through the resume route, because that doesn't really work anymore.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I would like to touch upon this in terms of job application, because I think one thing that engineers really struggle with is the idea that they are sending out so many resumes, and on the company's end, it's very difficult for you to see the value of your work that you put in just through a resume. So what you're saying is that the traditional way of job application is about, oh, I send out mass emails and see whether ones will stick, whether one will see. But your idea is that really to go out and network with the real people, and perhaps maybe connect with these real people and see what is actually required, and see if they are able to lend you the opportunity. Is that right to say?
Yeah, you have to network and learn more about what people are looking for, the employers and the companies,
Mm.
but also to say what how you can help. If you just go around and ask people for the job, they won't give it to you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think this is something that a lot of engineers struggle. They always go in and say what skill sets they have, but usually it's on the employer side. It's very difficult because they have to think of the idea of, okay, how will your skill sets match with whatever we are doing over here. But let's say if you come in, I think what you're doing is really, really good, because you come in, you already have a value propositions, and you already know what the company is going for and how your skills will match and value add to the company. I think that's a lot clearer.
Yes,
Yeah, correct, right?
exactly.
Awesome. So, actually, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about your startup venture. I thought it's very interesting that you really did try to do a startup. So, could you share with the audiences, a little bit more about the origins and how you really started? I understand it started with a master thesis, but perhaps maybe you could share a little bit more about your experiences also.
Yeah. So maybe I start with the name. So it's enriched because we want to enrich lives with 3D printed food. So it's the word enriched with the last ed turned to a 3D because 3D printing, and the first e turned to an a because my name starts with a. Uh, so that's how I came up with the name. And The reason why I wanted to start this was because when I was writing my thesis and looking for scope of future work and what is the existing state of the art, I noticed that I noticed like a gap in the market, which is basically saying that there are no most of the food printing companies were focused on the aesthetics of it. That felt very odd to me, as you as a human are doing the maths, and the machine is doing the art. uh, Whereas there's a clear application where the machine could do the optimization for precise measurements and doing the maths for having the precise amounts of every ingredient to give a personalized, optimized meal for you. And the focus on the human can be then on the artistic design of the food and the presentation and the culinary design of the food. So like the recipes and flavors and stuff. So in that sense, it could be a tool that enhances what people can do, and it also creates something that unlocks your full potential by giving you the optimal nutrition you need to, get the best out of your body. So that was my motivation to get that kind of optimized nutrition, at least for myself and hopefully for a lot of other people. So that's the proposal that I went with to NTU. There were a lot of different applications that we explored through that time, like making the healthy food in fun shapes, like Mickey Mouse or some superheroes or the characters for the kids to get them to start eating healthier. Then there's a soft food for elderly patients with high fiber and protein. So that was one of the other major applications that we try to keep going for with hospitals and elder care centers. And then, of course, there's the natural personalized nutrition for dietitians and gyms or something like that that offer this kind of program. So we explored a whole lot of different kinds of applications, and ultimately it seemed like the combination of where the technology is at and where the market is at, that they didn't match, and I couldn't find a proper niche which had the need for making this kind of thing. But the most important thing I would say I learned in terms of the product development side was that I didn't get someone, or at least I couldn't find someone who was passionate about food the same way I was passionate about the technology aspect of it.
Mm.
So if I had someone to champion the food recipes and the dishes and the diets that could be made with it, as I champion the technological capabilities of it, uh, that would have made like a more robust team to go forward. And on the business side, the biggest lesson I learned was that you start with the customers first. Even if you end up making the exact same thing, if the customers see the process of you solving one problem at a time in the beginning, they will be way more likely to support the product and even pay a lot more for the same thing if it's just embedded in their ecosystem, and they are able to grasp how it fits with their problems and their daily life, how it makes their situation easier. That makes a huge difference. So, for instance, if I were to do this again, I would start with asking chefs and dietitians how I can optimize or automate their current processes with mechanization or software and all. And going forward, I keep iterating the developments. Eventually, I'll get to something like a 3D printer or a more advanced version of a 3D printer, and at that point, there would already be not just an ecosystem of customers, but not just an ecosystem of these B2B customers, but the B2B2C customers as well, who have been having this kind of uh, food generated from these automated processes,
Mm.
and they would be like more willing to or more easily accepting these kinds of new innovations in this space. So that's what I would do going forward. That's what I learned.
Awesome. Yeah, I really resonate with your point about the business side thing, start with the customers. This is something that actually a lot of engineers tend to fly by their heads. They are always too married to the process, their technology, that they forget that ultimately what just give what the customers want and fulfill their biggest desires. That's actually what they really do care about. Yeah, even if it ends up being very different from how you envision it. Yeah, it has to be a technology and a platform that people care about. Exactly. Okay, awesome. So, I just wanted to also perhaps maybe dig your brain in a little bit more towards your perspective on, the current industry you're working at, and perhaps a little bit more about how it has evolved over the years. So in our earlier conversations, you mentioned you refined your long-term goal from mass producing useful technology that's affordable for the masses, which I think is somewhat what you're doing in food printing industry, and of course now to creating a hardware focused on deep tech accelerator that really taps on your knowledge of manufacturing technology. So could you elaborate a little bit more about the perspective shift and perhaps maybe where you are heading towards at the current moment?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a perspective shift. I would like to uh, say that it's a refinement of the goals in terms of making the words of the goal statement more specific as I go forward. So when I made that original target of mass producing useful technologies, making them affordable and available for everyone, when I was in like school or early college. Uh, so I basically didn't know anything. Uh, and that was based on my understanding of how things work at that point. The objective was always the same uh, to use my skill set and my direction and to focus on having the most impact that I can. Uh, so going forward, I learned more about uh, technopreneurship as I came to Singapore and learned more about this in NUS and then went through incubator program, a great incubator program in Bangkok called Space F. And I I did a lot of other entrepreneurship courses as well, and did so many pitches. So I was thoroughly enmeshed in this environment, and I see how one industrial mass production might have seemed like a huge impact when I was younger, but a normal company can never grow as fast as a startup. That's the
Mm,
key differentiator between what makes a startup versus a normal company. They
mm,
disrupt and they have bigger impacts than anything else. So, what's better than mass producing in one industrial factory is to have a startup set up so many factories. Um, and how do you help that? How do you help many of these deep tech startups that are hardware focused just have an accelerator or an incubator program that gives them access to the network of people, tools, and access to the facilities and all kinds of machines that can help them scale up and redesign and
mm,
make sure that they can have this kind of impact. And with my experience in and my knowledge in manufacturing and automation, with what I studied and how I worked, I think that as I grow my experience in uh, both the technical as well as business aspects of this, I will be well suited to try to make something like that, and that would be best use of my skills and resources to have the biggest impact I can.
mm. Awesome. And I'm also very curious about the industry, the space industry in general, because it's not really being talked about much, at least from the guests that I've spoken to and also in Singapore. So could you share a little bit more about, the opportunities and perhaps maybe some of the impending challenges that the industry is about to face?
Well, it's not very surprising that Singapore doesn't have a space industry like this. There's not enough space to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, so And the other thing is that the space industry itself is kind of intimidating in terms of the technical know-how required and the governmental regulations and all those kinds of issues. So it already has pretty high barriers to entry. So it does feel like it's something that might not be accessible to most, and that's what we are hoping to be able to change by providing this kind of platform that makes it more accessible. So even if you want to just send one tiny sensor that does some atmospheric measurements, you still have to make the entire rest of the satellite and get permissions from whatever government bodies are responsible for the regulations. So instead of having to do all of that, or having to contract it out to someone who again makes the entire satellite for you, you could just put the sensor on one of the satellites that we have that might already be going up for another purpose. So that will make it a lot more accessible to a lot more people, and people will start to think more in terms of uh, what is possible with space and how we can capitalize on this new opportunity that we now have access to, thanks to this platform and this relatively economical option. So that's what we are hoping to change here.
Awesome. And I'm just curious as well because I believe that some audiences would be very curious to find out how you can actually enter the space industry like yours. So, is there any like specific skill sets or things that they have to take note about when considering a career in this industry?
Well, even space industries need HR or like marketing and the all the regular stuff, customer acquisition kind of stuff. So you don't necessarily have to have a very different kind of skill set to just be in a space company. But if you want to make things like actually be part of making the satellite or any components that go into space, then you need to have specialized knowledge about that. For instance, have um, some engineering degree, which is maybe mechanical, electrical, electronics, software, those kinds of things. Even chemical and material science is required for some of the aspects. So having some kind of specialized knowledge would be necessary to build something that goes to space. Uh, and beyond that, it's also having the kind of confidence that I can do this, that even though it seems intimidating, and that nobody else is doing it, just thinking that you can means you probably can, uh, because there's not a lot of people doing this. So if you have the specific skill set, then there's more than likely that you will be able to find something somewhere to fit in here. The other thing that is also very important here is that the space industry is quite fragmented. So if you can find the right contacts, if you're good at doing this kind of search for finding contacts, the companies, suppliers of specific parts and coatings or any kind of components that we need, then that makes a huge difference, and that alone is basically half the value of the entire company, having this kind of um, database of this network. And the other half is about being able to really adapt to new tools, especially AI related stuff, and answer really esoteric questions, really specific questions in a good way, uh, which are backed by data in some sense, like something that is picked from a bunch of different papers and something published by established space institutions like NASA, JAXA, and all. Uh, you can, if you can find a good way to pick all of that up and compile that into good answers, good rules of thumb that can be created to build guidelines to make a spacecraft, then that basically reduces the work that we have to do by like 10 times, because we'd be experimenting, doing a lot of trial and error, which people have already done decades prior. So having those two skill sets, being able to search for suppliers and to be able
Mm.
to adapt with these new tools to find answers to specific questions, that will be really helpful on top of having some basic engineering background.
Awesome. So I also like to find out a little bit more about yeah, how you attribute that career as well. Now that we talk about skill sets that's required, I'm also very curious about, your journey and your lessons that you have for the younger engineers. So earlier you did mention about the idea that resumes don't work because everyone's doing it. So you have to have a creative way to get this outlet lah. Okay, or maybe some channels that still allows you to secure job opportunities. So could you share with the audiences, what are some of the things that they can do or you have done, okay, specifically in terms of networking, that has allowed you to open more conversations and doors for career opportunities?
Yep. So yeah, I would say go to all the events you can, especially the free ones. Uh, Make sure you do the networking with all kinds of people, but especially if possible, go to the events that are in your industry and in the specific area that you want to find jobs in, and make sure to always connect with everyone through LinkedIn, and keep messaging them with some sort of updates without asking for something every time. Just say that this is the new thing that I've done, or just hi, remember me, something like that. So that you are top of mind whenever they are thinking of recruiting again,
Mm,
and make sure that you always try to find a proposal or some way to solve a problem that the company is already facing. If you don't have that kind of insight, and or even the time to find what all these companies are doing, you can propose something that you want to do, that a lot of similar companies might be able to add as a new revenue line that
mm,
benefit their business. But they are like they haven't really thought about that, or not looking in that direction. So if you can make a new product, or help with some kind of project that a company can benefit from, that is something that will really help. But these are things that are much harder to do uh, than than just sending out resumes or emails. Uh, but there's another simpler thing that you might have more control over, which is to do a course, or which by which I mean teach something that you know, and create a podcast, or other things like that, that get your name out there with uh, as someone who can be trusted, who has an audience of some kind. That also helps.
So you're saying that because I noticed a lot of engineering leaders that are more social, like they create that social like profiles, they tend to be thought leaders lah. So let's say in the case whereby they share very passionately about AI and ML, write Medium articles on LinkedIn and post them and create an audience. So is that what you meant? Like, just being branding yourself as the subject matter expert in a certain field and documenting your experiences as well as the work that you're doing for the community. Is that right to say?
uh,
Okay.
that in multiple books, so must
Okay.
be.
Awesome. And I'm just curious as well, because I the traditional motif, yeah, like what you meant, it's always about resume and stuff. So, would you agree that, or at least is there a trend towards maybe employers, you know, when let's say for example now you are in the hiring you are part of the hiring committee or department. Okay, and you are looking at a engineer, correct? So what are some of the things that will really intrigue you to take on this person? Like, because now you don't just look about resume. Uh, what are some of the things that, let's say, the engineer does will actually intrigue you to actually offer him a position in
For
in
our case, for the most part, our requirements are so specific that if you find even one person that does that, that's the one who gets hired.
yeah,
Uh,
awesome. But
with
let's say,
more something slightly more generic that multiple people can do, then we would look at what is the experience comparison. Has that person done something similar before? Uh,
mm,
is so having examples of things that are close enough uh, is the best, but uh, given the field that we are in, that is also unlikely. So the next best thing, and something that is arguably much more important, is that if they have this ability to adapt and change as they realize that there's new technologies available, new situations, or just uh, change in the set of constraints that they had before that they don't have anymore, or a set of new constraints that they have now. So if they did some projects that we can see in their resume that had some sort of twists that they adapted around, that would be great to know, because this is a very multidisciplinary, complicated environment, and things can go very wrong very fast. So we need people who are agile and who can and basically resilient to a lot of different kinds of change, and be able to design new things with new technologies. Like for instance, very recently, I'm doing a course for satellite manufacturing for school kids.
mhm,
It's just teaching about the basics of what
mm,
satellite manufacturing is about. And the first 3 or 4 lectures were focused on doing the structure of the satellite, some constraints related to that. But then eventually, I found out that I could do most of this in the CAD software itself. I kind of knew that already, but I didn't see that as the problem statement in the beginning, and now that is something that I should use going forward without having to have this sweet spot or soft spot to go back to what I spent so much time developing in the first place. I if I have this new tool and that kind of works fine, I'd rather use that and adapt according to that, change my designs going forward using all of that new stuff that I have.
awesome. And as we wrap up this podcast episode, okay, do you have any important final advice for young engineers on what they should be doing to create bigger career opportunities for themselves?
Yes, I have a few.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah, feel free to share away.
by the way, have you seen this?
Oh, oh wow, this is really out of this world.
This is the James Webb Telescope.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So I thought it would be fitting for this interview.
Yeah, finally we managed to get to see it. The shirt.
So the first thing would be to take initiative to try to do as many different kinds of things as you can to have a well-rounded skill set. If you have different kinds of experience, there's it's more likely that a company that it's more likely that you'll find at least one company that can hire you. But even for a company that is doing something specialized, there are usually multiple skill sets required in the same person. So it's better to be more well-rounded as much as possible. Uh, so that's about learning new things and all that kind of stuff, and doing unique things that nobody else has done. Basically, standing apart from the crowd a little bit, as much as you can. Then the next thing is about passion, or finding a passion, or your like your life's purpose kind of thing, which is something that I've had the privilege of having for most of my life. Like I had a goal, and it's not like it changed a lot um, through my life. So I was able to have the same goal and didn't have to change it much. Uh, I didn't have to had that difficult conversation with myself to figure out what I love uh,
Mm.
next. That this now that this thing didn't work. So, uh, but I realized that most people don't have that. So most of the time you would not know what to do, and that's kind of the default position. So if that's the case, then the best thing to do is to pick a few things that you're good at and see with what you can help people solve some problem. So if it is actually solving a problem that and has some sort of value in that, then there will be a way to monetize it. So there will probably be a career around that. So when you do that, have a career helping people and seeing the impact that you have in real time, you will start to feel passionately about it, because that's innately human. It's our nature to be able to feel useful to our community, to help in some way, to give back. And if you're able to do that, that will automatically give you that kind of passion. Even if that doesn't happen and you don't start to feel differently, at least you found something that can help other people, uh, that also gives you some financial stability. And even if you don't feel like it still gives your life some sort of purpose, that this is the contribution that you can make to the world to leave it a better place than you found it.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, appreciate the wise advice from someone like yourself. And yeah, I really do agree. Ultimately, it's always about the path illuminating itself forward, but connecting the dots backward. Sometimes we get to analysis paralysis. Sometimes we get too caught up with our thoughts. We don't dare to move forward. But usually the best step is always the first a step forward. It doesn't have to be the best step forward, but it just has to be a step forward in the direction you feel that you're either passionate about, or perhaps maybe it's the right choice. Yeah, so I think that's something that I've learned over the years as well. Yep. Awesome. Okay, yeah, so anyways, as we come to the end of the podcast, Anirudh, I believe we could find you on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So anyone who really want to go into space industry, please feel free to connect with Anirudh. And hope whatever he has shared with you actually inspired all of you to eventually take arms and perhaps maybe even consider a career over at Galamad Aerospace.
Office that we have in Singapore, the space is the office space is literally called in space.
In space.
We literally work in
Wow.
space.
Wow, I mean, that's a very interesting coincidence. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
So
so anyways,
that was a deliberate choice. That's
oh,
the place that we picked, and we picked the office that's right
right.
behind in space logo. So if you take picture from that, it's like we're
Yeah,
literally.
literally in space. Wow, I mean, Christopher, your CEO must have been a very creative
Yeah.
person to think of that. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so anyways, that's a wrap for the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.